You hear me?
Hi, Mark. Yes, I can hear you okay. That's
That
good.
was more complicated than it should have been.
Yeah.
Anyway, here we are.
Okay, so continuing on, and thank you for your cooperation and your enthusiasm. I'm enjoying the discussion. Um, so I have a question about the the title Aetherius Society because it got me thinking, ether, surely does that means, out into space, out into eternity, or is it something spiritual like the energy about us? So could you give me a bit more clarity on that phrase, or that, the Aetherius
Yeah,
Society?
yeah. Well, I think that ether. Well, ether is something which in mysticism exists everywhere. So it's not just on Earth or just in space. And Aetherius refers to that which travels through the ether. That's one interpretation of that word.
Mm-hmm.
And it refers to an advanced being from another planet who has played, well, to say has played a significant part is an understatement. It is, a massive figure in our teachings, has given some of the greatest teachings to Earth that we've ever had,
Mm-hmm.
and has also helped to save Earth from behind the scenes. We call this intelligence the Master Aetherius. That's not a real name; it's a pseudonym. I don't know if beings as advanced as that even have names in their own world. I have no idea how that works, but this is a name that we've been given to use for this intelligence.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Now, this next question um, relates to you've got a vast body of you I don't want to say cherry picked. That might come across as wrong, but to me as an outsider, it would seem, and I also through discussions with other people, because I've been interested in this organization, it would seem that the Aetherius Society has cherry picked from every spiritual movement that ever existed.
Well, okay, so let's do it one thing at a time. Um, I mean, yes, cherry picking is not the word that we would use. So we're not an organisation that is founded on the basis of um, let's mix lots of different religions together. That is not the motivation behind the religion. It's more a case that there is truth in
Mm-hmm.
all of the great religions.
Mm-hmm.
We embrace those truths as they exist in those religions. So let's take Christianity, for example, the concept of love and peace. We embrace those concepts. We do not, however, embrace the concept that exists in many forms of Christianity today,
Mm-hmm.
um, which I would argue is not real Christianity, and that is the concept of people being sent to eternal hell
Ah.
because they go to the wrong church or they've broken some rule or something. We do not believe in that.
Right.
Hinduism and Buddhism, we believe in reincarnation, but we don't believe that people are born as animals,
Mm.
for example, or certainly not as a usual thing. Basically, humans reincarnate as humans, and dogs reincarnate as dogs,
Mm-hmm.
etc. So we have. It's not really cherry picking. It's we embrace the truths of other religions as we consider them to be true. Where there are differences, we're quite happy to respect people's right to disagree with us and us to disagree with them. And that's fine. We don't really want to get into debates with other religions.
Mm.
But at the same time, we have to be, honest and straightforward. That some things we believe and some things we don't. We don't think that everything that everybody believes is valid, as some people do believe that if you believe it, that makes it true. It doesn't. Just because you believe something, that does not make it true.
So, thanks for that response. And I really was listening to what you were saying, Mark. When you mentioned about, because one of the fundamental doctrines in Christianity is salvation, and for the believers, Jesus teaches about hell numerous times in the Bible. The Bible says, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Jesus chewing out the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Um,
I don't know exactly what Jesus is purported to have said about hell, actually, because Sodom and Gomorrah was long before Jesus, wasn't it?
I can recall. O generation of vipers, and this is the KJV version. O generation of vipers, who hath warned you to flee the wrath to come? So there we have again metaphor, obviously. Vipers, anytime you speak out against them, they're like vipers. They, because remember, there were numerous times when the Jews at that time tried to stone him to death for what he was saying because they considered it blasphemy. Um, you know, Thou being a man claimest makest thyself a god. And there's the KJV English coming out again. I'm very familiar with that um, translation. Although I am aware of like the Geneva Bible. There's differences in translation, but I know you were saying you weren't aware of the quotations. But the concept is in there. The parable of the rich man and Lazarus, for example. Are you familiar with that one?
It doesn't leap to mind, to be honest. If you say it, it might jog my memory, but I can't think of it at this moment, I'm afraid.
Okay. Well, you've heard about you've heard of the devil. Does the Aetherius Society have a you know or personification of evil? Do they adopt this
Okay,
idea?
yeah, there are many things to be said about that. So I think the most basic thing to say is the idea of God and the devil sort of being equals on opposite sides is completely erroneous. Um, the devil, is well. Let's think. I mean, devil can mean different things to different people. One thing it can mean, even in our teachings, actually, is ignorance, as spiritually, not lack of education, like not knowing algebra and stuff, but real ignorance in the sense of not understanding the truth of what life is really all about, which
Mm.
is about spiritual evolution and selfless service. So that's fairly easy to understand interpretation of the
It's
word devil.
Yeah, it's
In,
interesting you say that, and sorry to interject, but there's something I want to share about that. You know, because when you read up on Christian organizations, quote unquote, and not to poke my finger or not to point the finger at anyone, but I need to obviously, for example, this is what the 5th of November, so we've got. This has got the what date can you remember the 5th of November is when uh, Guy Fawkes and the conspirators tried to blow up the Houses of Parliament to restore the Catholic religion, but also, and this isn't me poking at the Catholic religion, but it's just to make you've got the Holocaust, the Pope blessed Hitler, you've got numerous child sexual abuses. Need I go any further? Um, Yet this the Mother Church they call it, and yet there's been so much evil. Um, and also the Spanish Inquisition. I don't think I need to go any further. You get the picture.
well, there's certainly been many abuses of power by many religions around the world throughout history,
Yeah.
which is unfortunately, I mean, I mean, it's terrible on so many levels, but one tragedy of that is that it puts people off spirituality altogether, which is very sad. But I think these days, though, just because, say, maybe your church has treated you badly, or you've read some horror story about some particular religion, that is not an excuse, though, to stop the spiritual quest.
Oh no, I haven't. No, no, no,
It's
no.
first of all, people are people, and people can be just awful.
Mm,
But that doesn't necessarily mean that that their religion is completely wrong.
yeah. So,
People are very complicated, and it's possible for someone to be good in some ways and bad in another. Now, we should not in any way condone the bad, of course not. But the only point I'm making is that it's a bit like an expression I think my great grandmother used to have, which was a bad priest never kept me out of church. Which, if you take that broadly as a metaphor, I'd say the mistakes made by religious people in the past should not keep someone from the spiritual quest for truth.
yeah, I know you're saying, I understand what you're saying, but there's also much smaller organizations with a bigger mouth. For example, the Westboro Baptist Church are protected by the United States Constitution. They won a case. They went and picketed a dead soldier's funeral, because I think he died in Iraq or Afghanistan. They went and picketed that funeral, and that the father was in tears because of it. And yet, the First Amendment right. They actually won that case up to the Supreme Court. They won it, and it baffles
Well,
me.
it's not an area that I am familiar
Yeah.
with. We don't really like to point fingers at specific religions, but suffice it to say that we certainly do not agree with picketing soldiers' funerals. I've never actually heard a doctrine given on the subject, but I can certainly say from my own point of view, as a priest in the Aetherius churches, I do not endorse picketing funerals. It sounds horrible to me.
And Jesus never commands us to do. Jesus never went to picket at a funeral. Anyway, I don't know. There's a lot to be said for it, but anyway. Okay, so I just want to pick up on something you said there, because you said a priest in the Aetherius Society. Do you get ordained, or how does that happen? Can you talk a little bit about that? And do you ordain women priests as well?
Yes, we have complete equality for men and women at every level of ordination and consecration. And the first two bishops appointed by Dr. King, one was male and one was female. We have ordination ceremonies that are, I'd say, with a leaning towards the Christian tradition, but a little bit different. But there is the principle of laying on of hands and passing down the apostolic succession.
Okay. Now, I know you mentioned it being like Christianity, but in Christianity, you probably, I don't know if you've heard this verse, but Christians like to quote it, and I've obviously recited it myself. Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." How does a priest in the Aetherius Society understand that?
Well, we don't. I mean, we may find bits of the Bible interesting, but we don't regard the Bible as our supreme authority. The Bible has a lot of great stuff in it, but it cannot be treated as completely reliable. It's a very old document. Translation, interpretation, cultural issues and sometimes probably just downright deliberate editing. Sometimes maybe with the best of intentions, sometimes maybe with less than good intentions. So we don't sort of look at Bible verses and try to understand them necessarily. There may be parts of the Bible that interest us. For example, there are many accounts of UFOs in the Bible, which we believe are extraterrestrial spacecraft. So, for example, one we're absolutely sure of is that the Star of Bethlehem was in fact an extraterrestrial spacecraft.
That's new to me.
I can tell by the expression on your face.
Well, do you believe it was shepherds or kings that followed that extraterrestrial spacecraft? Because there's different.
I don't know, but they're not mutually exclusive. If I were a little more scholarly, actually, I believe that in our teachings, I believe there is some mention of those kings, but I'm afraid I'd have to be really sure, I'd have to research that and get back to you.
So, I'm assuming as a priest in the Aetherius Society, I know we're focusing a lot on Jesus, but you believe that Jesus that Jesus was a historical figure, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Because there's a big gap in his life between the ages of 12 and 30. We don't know what. Maybe he was on a pilgrimage. Maybe he was out. We don't.
Well, again, to give you a really good answer, I'd need to do a little more research. But I'm 99% certain that in our teachings it is stated that he did travel during that time and developed himself using yogic techniques and became a master of yoga with great psychic powers, inverted commas, miraculous powers, such as the ability to walk on water, and most importantly of all, of course, attaining enlightenment itself, wisdom.
Now, on that point, because I know we were talking a little bit about the death penalty, because I know that you're saying that you don't consider the Bible, 100% the Word of God, but in the Bible, there is reference to Jesus' crucifixion, that he was murdered. And you mentioned about him being enlightened, but then you've got the resurrection, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going back on what you said previously. Is there? Do you have? The death, burial, and resurrection? To make it more concise, is there a belief? Is that in the Aetherius Society of Jesus' death, birth, and resurrection?
Yes, there certainly is. The challenge in answering this question is to keep it brief and simple. Mm-hmm. It's very, very interesting, but it is takes a little bit of work to grasp it. So we do believe that Jesus was crucified, but we believe that Jesus deliberately allowed himself to be crucified. He wasn't deceived into it. He wasn't tricked into it. He deliberately allowed that to take place in order to bring about what we call a karmic manipulation that was needed at that time. So what that means is that at that time, the karma of humanity was so bad as a whole that a massive catastrophe was due that would have set us back. I think the estimate given is something like 5,000 to 7,000 years in that order.
What do you mean set us back? Can you clarify that? I don't understand what you mean.
If there's a massive global catastrophe, then that sets the development of civilization back.
Okay.
It would slow down the evolutionary progress of us. Like God forbid, but if there was some cataclysm now,
Mm-hmm.
and we lost all our technology, all our literature, all our spiritual teachings, and we just became illiterate cave dwellers who didn't know anything about anything. That would be a kind of an analogy, comparison. Yeah.
Okay, Mark, I've got two final questions. I mean, you can keep them brief, but they've been on my mind lately, just with they've just been on my mind. And the first question here is, because this is a bit controversial, does the Aetherius Society allow LGBTQ persons in their membership?
Yes, we certainly do allow LGBT people in our membership, and we are happy for them to worship with us.
Okay. And the last question for you today is, what would be your opinion? I know you mentioned about the death penalty, but what would be your opinion on health topics like abortion, euthanasia, and genetic engineering? Hmm.
Well, we don't have specific teachings on any of those subjects, actually. And that's one unusual thing about the Aetherius Society is those issues of well, the first two certainly, questions of personal choice and individual rights.
Mm.
These, we're not saying they're not important. It's just not an area that we really go into. The area that we go into is radiating spiritual energy to the world to raise consciousness. And if consciousness is risen sufficiently, then we, as a planetary race, will know the answers to these things, and far more besides.
Yeah. Well. Okay. So in our previous interview, you said you had, the Aetherius Society doesn't have very much in common with fundamentalist Christians, but there are fundamentalist Christians who consider abortion murder. So I just wanted to, you know, um, I know you didn't said that you didn't have much in common, but and it's not, there's no body of teaching on it, but I know.
Well, I'm now representing the Aetherius Society, and if we don't have, as far as I'm aware, any teachings on that topic, then I can't really comment on it.
Mm.
I can't give you my personal opinions because I am representing the Aetherius Society. I think it's I think I have to leave it there. Really, I mean, I think you would find that different people within our organisation would have different views on it.
Mm-hmm.
For different reasons. It's not something that I've actually discussed very much, if at all, with other members of the Aetherius Society. But yeah, I think you'd find differing opinions on it.
Wow, this conversation has really blown me away. It's been incredible. I've really enjoyed it. Lots of questions.
I've really enjoyed chatting to you, Chad.
Yeah. So, Mark, until we meet again, I suppose. I have.
Well, let's hope it's not another 5 years.
No, let's hope it's not another 5 years. But thank you so very much. You're okay. I've managed to record some of this just for my own personal, to listen to over again. Is that okay? Your responses. I mean,
yeah. So you're not planning to broadcast it at all, then?
you wouldn't approve of that, would you?
No, I was anticipating that you would.
Okay, yes, I'm going to, because I did that with our previous interview way back in October of 2019. So I'll do the same with this one. Happy enough then? Yeah.
Yes, that's fine. Yeah, just let us know when it's out,
Okay.
And one of my colleagues will take a listen, and all being well, we'll put it in our e-newsletter, which goes out to hundreds of people.
Okay, Mark. All the very best then.
All the best to you, Chad. Nice to talk to you. Bye bye.
Bye.